tell me about the beginnings of
The Her.
the.
Began in about 1979 from an advert in the New Musical Express. And I've been in bands since I was about 11 anyway. And the kind of influences of that time was, I suppose, the reason I formed the band was because of, I was a big fan of groups like Throbbing Gristle, Cabaret Voltaire, and The Residents, and Thomas Lear, and stuff like that. And I wanted I wasn't interested in punk. I mean, punk kind of bypassed me, you know, it was something that didn't interest me at all. But the post-punk music, that kind of genuine underground music which happened about that time, was something which I found quite inspirational. And I formed it from an advert in the NME, just said people that are into blah, 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 the bands I just mentioned. And I got a few people, and then it just kind of formed from there. And since then, that's over 8 years ago now, actually. And since then, there's been a lot of people been through the ranks of the group. But I mean, I decided to make it essentially, you know, I was the only constant member, also with my brother, Andy Dogg, who's always done the artwork and stuff. But the musicians have been constantly changing. But it's kind of metamorphosized into more than just like a group, because now, you know, there was, with the Infected project, it was the beginning of it really was the birth, I suppose, of the initial idea, you know, a kind of like a multimedia thing whereby we had a book come out and then there was the videos made, as well as the record. So it was available in all formats, really, that you could think of. And this was a prototype for future projects. So I want to start getting more involved in film. I'm going to be doing some film music soon. And hopefully I want to eventually direct more films as well as getting involved in other kinds of writing, like writing short stories and prose and stuff like that. So Infected almost was like an end of an era and a start of an era, really. It was something that I'd wanted to do for a long time. And I'm surprised that no bands had really done it, you know, never really. See, video has always been used as part of the promotional aspect of music making. I want, you know, that it's part of, you know, a band makes a record and they think, well, they've got to go on tour, they've got to do interviews, they've got to do a video. I wanted to sort of like drag the video into the creative part, as creative a part as actually making the music and as relevant as that. And managed to do that. And very few people have actually done that, really. There's been a lot of good videos over the years, but generally they're created with the what's the word? Well, the reason they're created is purely for record sales, not actually to some kind of artistic statement of that. And with this whole Infected project, it was about 2 years ago that I started it, and this is probably the last interview I'll do for it. It's just about finished now, thankfully, but it's taken a lot out of my life. But it was a very political project as well. That was quite prophetic in a way, in that track "Sweet Bird of Truth," which was written at the end of '85. It could have almost been written about the American attack on Libya, and that's something which has fascinated me. Current affairs and global affairs, mixing those, I think that you can't really untangle the personal and the political. And there's two strands which have run concurrently throughout all my work. On this album, there's some of the most personal songs I've written, like Slow Train to Dawn, which is about infidelity, and Out of the Blue Into the Fire, Infected, which are songs about manifestations of desire. And then you've got them next to songs like Heartland, which is almost like a requiem for Britain in the 1980s. I think that's probably the best song I've ever written, Heartland. It's kind of sums up my feelings for the country, although it's not, it works on various levels. It's not just a political statement. It's also a very personal track, and it's almost, the song was like a journey through certain parts of London and certain parts, like in the lyrics where I said the Old Iron Bridges, Victorian Park, Saturday Morning Cinema. They're all places that still exist in areas in East London where I was brought up, and I still often walk around those parts. And on the kind of weather we're having now, where you've got a beautiful blue sky, there is almost a bearable poignancy about those places. I don't find those areas depressing. I find a kind of romanticism, almost in like an Edward Hopper sense, the painter from the American Depression.
Are you sentimental, do you think, about
the
idea of England? Because, I mean, the song is obviously very anti the idea of Britain becoming just a sort of something for
a satellite
states
of
to
America.
play with, yeah.
No, I am sentimental for British, but I'm not only anti-American foreign policy, but anti, say, the British class system and anti-British establishment. But I am very sentimental towards Britain and at certain things of Britain, certain elements of the country. But I'm fascinated by the decaying side, like walking around certain areas that are quite desolate. I find that quite romantic. There are other areas which are very sort of depressing, which are fairly run down. But it depends on the kind of mood you're in and the kind of day you're in. And that song was really quite an optimistic song, I think, ultimately.
Why did it take so long for you to follow up your soul mining LP with Infected? Was it because there was so much of Infected to be planned, or did you just do nothing for a while?
No, so I got quite sick after a soul mining. I kind of worked too hard, and I nearly lost my eyesight, and I ended up in hospital. And it took me a while to recuperate. And I also just wanted to think about. I've tried to kind of conduct my career with as much dignity as possible, and actually do things when I wanted to do them, rather than have commercial pressure put on me. Right, I better get a record out now, otherwise the people forget me. I don't think that people forget you. If you're good enough, then you're there forever. I think that it's only bands that have got limited lifespans that have to release tons and tons of records, because they know they've only got a couple of years. You see, so they've got to earn their life's wages in that period of time. But I've always like to sort of be thoughtful about what I do and take time over it. And soul mining, I felt pretty burnt out physically, mentally, and every other way. So I took a lot of time. But in fact, it was a massive project, because there was like 62 musicians involved, 4 video directors, 3 co-producers, painters, photographers, as well as all this sort of other kind of people that are involved. It was massive amount of people. It's almost like making a feature film in a way, the amount of people that had to be involved in it. And writing it was fairly tough. You know, I took a lot of care and attention over the lyrics and over the arrangements and the instrumentation. And the actual recording it was very difficult, because the amount of musicians involved. And actually filming it as well, we went to a couple of continents to do it, in South America and Britain. So it took a lot of time, really. And I probably won't do another thing like that. I don't know, it's difficult to tell. I'd like to think the next album I do, which I'm working on fairly soon actually, is going to be probably a very small base of musicians, maybe about 6 musicians. What I'm going to do is distill the most successful working relationships from this project and carry them over to the next one. I'm actually looking for a good female singer at the moment, Seth. It's only out there, but it's got to be the next album is going to probably be less political in some ways, more personal, because Infected ruined my personal life. Basically, it created a lot of problems because I've been so obsessed with my work, and I've neglected other areas of my life. And so obviously the next album it's probably going to be a love album, or not
By way of
necessarily
apology to someone.
kind of, yeah. Not necessarily apology, but it certainly will be much more personal. And yeah, I mean, I've learned a lot over the past 5 weeks. I've been through quite a traumatic time, and I've just realised that even you may have sort of like gold records and critical reviews, but they mean nothing, you know, compared to other areas of your life. I mean, you can't consider yourself a successful human being unless you actually are successful in, say, the things that matter most to you, like personal relationships and you know, friendships and stuff. And there's areas of my life which I neglected. I thought that they would fall into place. I thought that you worked at your vocation and everything else fell into place. And I've realised tragically that's not the case. But I think as long as you learn from your mistakes, you don't let your pride get in the way. You don't let pride, bitterness, revenge kind of pollute your mind, because people do that and then they fail again through marriage and divorce for the rest of their life, because they fail to blame themselves, or they fail to learn from their mistakes. I think if you learn from your mistakes and apply those lessons to your life, then, you know, you got to be fairly philosophical about these things. And I've been obsessed by my work since I was about 11, just obsessed by that. And I actually think that certainly I can be as obsessed with my work, but certainly, you know, when I come away from the work, just be as obsessed by other parts of your life and work as hard as at those.
Tell me about the actual shooting of the video or film or whatever you choose to call it, Infected. I mean, there must have been some quite hair-raising things going on when you go and do a shoot in Bolivia.
Yeah. I wish I'd kept memoirs, actually, because you wouldn't believe what went on, and I've forgotten a lot of it, actually. There was
Why did you choose Bolivia in the first place?
Well, because Sleazy Christopherson, who directed the ones that were done in Bolivia and who you'll be talking to shortly, he's producer and had contacts down there, and suggested it and showed me photographs of the place, because he'd already been down there and showed me photographs of the place, and it seemed perfect, because for the songs I wanted to do down there, like Mercy Beat particularly, where there was a very heavy influence in the song, it was steeped in almost Catholicism, commercialism, all these kind of very powerful forces. And the imagery that we would find down there was perfect. You'd have guys cruising around with Elvis haircuts, with their crucifixes hanging down from their cars and stuff. The Catholic influence down there is almost suffocating. It's very tacky and very bizarre.
Also Catholic.
No, I'm not actually, but I use a lot of that imagery. I don't know why I use a lot of religious imagery. I'm actually very anti-institutionalized religion. I'm a very spiritual person, but I'm very anti-religion in that I think that people from as soon as they're born are almost educated to delegate responsibility of their life, either in the confession box or the ballot box. And it's like the whole thing, isn't it? Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I mean, I don't have to ask anybody for forgiveness. I've not sinned at all, It's just copping out, just refusing to take responsibility for your own life. So I'm very suspicious of any kind of religion. And I think that what people should do is really realise that I do think that faith is a very powerful force. I don't disagree with that. And I think that there is definitely something, but I think that something is in themselves. People should worship themselves, not some kind of icon. That's where the power is. That's how they're putting themselves in touch with the forces, because there are definite invisible forces that move around the planet and that you can tap into, either for benevolent reasons or malevolent purposes, which people throughout history have done. People like Hitler, Napoleon, and then you've got the great philanthropists that have also done that. But it certainly doesn't come through praying to a little icon. It comes through worshipping yourself and having faith in yourself.
So back to Bolivia.
Oh yeah, it was
wild. Practicalities of it. Like, tell me about the experience of filming.
It was pretty hellish getting down there, because to me, there was a 5-week period. I'd already done 1 or 2 in England, and I went to New York to do 3 in New York, and then fly straight up to meet the crew in Bolivia. New York was pretty tough, because I was getting up they were the ones with Tim Pope. I was getting up very early in the morning, finishing very late at night, and in New York it's difficult to sit in your hotel room anyway, so I was pretty exhausted then. And flying down to South America, we stopped off in Jamaica for 3 days, just to break up the journey, really. But South America is totally chaotic. The South American people, they're trying to get anywhere to anywhere. Planes never turn up. You never know where you are. You're staying in weird hotels. And we arrived in the jungle. No, Peru we arrived in first, and it was a place in the jungle called Iquitos. But there's something very peculiar about South America. You can almost sense the spirits in the air. There's something very magical about the place. But the thing was, the heat started to get to people, and also people were doing things they shouldn't have done, I suppose, when in South America. I mean, I'm not excluding myself from the blame there, but you kind of get a bit carried away. And everyone got up to things that you can't really talk about on TV. And you started to get a bit paranoid and stuff, and they started to get a bit of tension amongst people. Then when we flew to Bolivia, La Paz, there's altitude sickness. I don't know if you heard about it. It's very high up, so you can't breathe properly for about a week, and you kind of got very weird. Your lungs feel about that big, and you keep almost fainting and stuff. So the schedule was very tough. There was the kind of things that the abuse that people put themselves through as well, and I probably had one of the worst periods of my life there, actually. I remember phoning up and speaking to my girlfriend on the phone, and I was like crying down the phone to her, actually, just like saying, I was stuck on the other side of the world. I just wanted to come back, it was driving me crazy. It was almost like the song that I was singing about, Mercy Beat, I was using very, very powerful metaphors to describe the human condition, using a lot of devil imagery, a lot of religious imagery. This song was almost coming to life before my very eyes. I mean, I had actually hallucinated in this hotel room. I saw these tarantulas upside side of the wall. I was having these really weird dreams and everything. And I think if you look at the video, they are quite intense. There's scenes at the end of Mercy Beat where I'm being thrown into the air by all these Indians and stuff, and there's like snakes, and a monkey bit a guy's finger off nearly, and the guy rubbed all the blood over my face. but we're so out of our head. I mean, I certainly wouldn't have done that stuff sober. I hate snakes anyway. I can't stand them. But I had hold of this snake and I was grabbing hold of it and stuff. It's like, ah.
What was the reaction of the local people to all you, mad English
Whiteys.
descending of?
They were really great. They were worse than we were. They were trying to get us to take hallucinogenics and stuff. And there was these witch doctors with like hats on them. They were. The South American people were superb, actually. They were great. And there is that element of, although my stuff is fairly political and I'm kind of anti a lot of Western foreign policy, that in a way I was kind of representing that, going down there, and we were maybe exploiting the local people. And that's something that I thought about. But we paid them and they enjoyed themselves while they were doing it. And I thought it was a good experience. It was good to get that on film. But I certainly did start to consider things like that. Am I just as bad as other people, going down there exploiting local people and stuff? But no, it was very enjoyable. I met some really nice people down there, actually, and I do tend to go down there again.
Was there a lighter side to it? I mean, was there mirth and hilarity going on amongst all the tarantulas crawling up the wall?
Oh yeah, there was. I mean, it was just great fun as well doing it. It's very enjoyable, and we did have a good laugh doing it. But you tend to remember the most dramatic moments, and in fact, there was a lot of funny things. I just wish I'd written things down. I really wish I'd been keeping memoirs and stuff, because there's so many things happening, and you forget about them. You just remember certain things which you kept talking about. It's like when you go on holiday, isn't it? You speak about it in detail to the first couple of people you see, then you forget everything. And I was
told to ask you about the brothel, about something that happened in a brothel.
Oh yeah, in which one? No, there was one. We filmed in a brothel in Harlem, actually, in New York, and now that was on that Jonathan Ross show. I did make a joke about brothels and stuff. I don't want to talk about that. I'm trying to get away from that kind of side of stuff. Being too tacky. It's not fashionable anymore in the AIDS age. You can't. You have to be monogamous nowadays.
Are you when you write the kinds of songs that you do write, I mean, thinking about things like Heartland, I mean, are you striving to be a commentator or an agitator? I mean, would you go along with the Red Wedge people who actually want to sort of use their music or their celebrity status to impel people to do things?
I did play some Red Wedge gigs recently. I'm not a member of Red Wedge, but before the election, because I'm so disgusted by the Conservatives, that I actually wanted to, not that Labour necessarily represent all my feelings, but they coincide more than any of the other parties. So I did do a couple. I'd not played live for 4.5 years, but I did a couple of benefit gigs with Red Wedge because of that, and did a press conference and stuff. But no, I don't want to become a member of Red Wedge. I don't want, because I think what happens is that then people just compartmentalise you, if that's the right word, and then, oh well, he's to do with that. No, certainly a commentator rather than agitator. I see myself just as observing and writing about these things, and the politics has become more and more relevant. I suppose as you get older, it becomes, when you're about 16 or 17 or whatever, it's not particularly relevant. It's only as you get older you start to maybe disbelieve everything that's told to you, and you start to actually think for yourself more. But not just the politics, but just I want to be a great songwriter. That's what I'm striving towards. Just achieving greatness as a songwriter.
How much does pop success mean to you then? I mean, there must be commercial constraints on you. It sounds very nice to say, well, I don't feel like I want to do an album every year or whatever, but the money for a project like Infected, and the money that you need must be considerable.
Yes, so that's right.
Where does it come from? What do you have to...
Well, see, the thing is, I'm lucky in that the music that I like doing does cross over commercially. I mean, if I was, say, somebody that was more left-wing musically, I'd be in trouble because I'd have all big ideas, but I would then be in this position where I'd have to compromise. But it just so happens that I actually like good pop music, as well as music which is more left field. I mean, the music that I like doing, I mean, I don't have hits. I mean, the nearest I've come to a hit was in this country, in England rather, is Heartland at 29, and that was, I don't suppose I will, because I get to a certain area, and I make enough money to be able to live quite comfortably and be able to finance the projects. But certainly, commercial success, I mean, more interested in critical success, but commercial success is what finances things, so it is important. But I don't have to, unfortunately, I don't have to sort of compromise my ideas or my musical taste to get it, because my stuff does cross over, and it sells fairly well, album-wise. to enable me to finance it. Yeah, but it'd be naive to say that there isn't an element of business attached to it. You know, I'm not an idealist, I'm a realist. Well, there's a bit of idealism in there as well, but I mean, I do realise that CBS, you know, the biggest record company, they're not in it, they're in it for business, they're not in it for artistic reasons. They want to make money, and if they don't make money out of me, then they'll drop me and someone else will pick me up, you know, and that's pretty obvious to me, really. But I've got quite a good relationship with them. They pretty much let me do what I want to do. I don't let them come down the studio. I don't let anyone come down the studio. And no, I'm lucky, but I've had to fight for that kind of relationship. You know, it's been hard work getting that kind of mutual respect, and it's a slow process, but I'd rather it be this, just very steady, slow but sure. Each project is bigger than the last, and just finally getting towards where I want to achieve, what I want to achieve. Rather than say when I first signed with CBS, I did fall into the trap of trying to have a hit single with the first thing I put out. I think it was Uncertain Smile on CBS. And I went along, you know, having the right photos done and doing the right things. And I just thought, God, this is really going against the grain of my character. And I realised that the way forward, or the way forward for me, was not at all compromising the work, but just promoting more vigorously. It meant doing more interviews, and I ended up doing about 700 in the last year or so, just to get across, because a lot of radio stations ban my records, like in this country and other countries, they don't play my stuff, and the videos got banned in certain countries. And to get past that, it means that I've got to do more and more interviews. It means like local radio and blah, blah, blah. And that kind of works. In a way, it's what the Labour Party did, or Neil Kinnock did in the last election campaign, and that he bypassed the centre and went to all the regionals, and it started to work wonders, because people were actually getting his feelings unfiltered, rather than with me. They weren't hearing my stuff really via Radio 1.